Hi guys, welcome to Poseidon Sport Fishing Tackles and Charter. We've had a lot of anglers ask this question on what rod length to use, what action, what power to use, and what reel to use. So they're always confused about what to use and how to choose the right rod and reel. And fishing is a sport. Like any other sport, the right gear that you use will make a huge difference. So we are here to help you with choosing the right tackle. So we'll just go through what are the components that you need to be looking at when you're actually picking up a rod, reel, and the line. So we'll do this video in 3 parts. So the part 1 will cover about the rods and reels. Part 2 will go through the line, different types of line, what type line to use for what fishing, and what PE means, and what thickness of line to use to cast your lures further. And part 3 will cover the basic rigs to be using in sea fishing and freshwater fishing. To start with, so we'll just go through the rods. Choosing a fishing rod, so there are different lengths of fishing rods. The common ones are 6, 7, 8, 9 and 10 feet. So a lot of people choose different rod lengths based on their actual angling needs. A normal kind of thumb rule is normally people who are fishing in freshwater, you will see that they are using more of 6, 7 and 8, and normally people who are fishing in salt water will be using either 9 or a 10. And the reason being, in freshwater you don't need a long casting distance, and normally you're fishing in rivers and other places with a lot of trees and other things, so a long fishing rod is actually going to be hard for you to handle. And when you're actually fishing off a surf beach or a pier, the 9 or 10 feet gives you that added advantage. One advantage being your rod is quite long, so when you're actually casting your bait or lure and when you're actually retrieving it back, so when it comes close to the rocks, you will have the length of the rod which will help you to lift the actual lure or the bait out of the water. If the rod is too short, you reel it in so it comes really close and gets tangled in the rocks. So that's one thing. And also the second thing, the length of the rod actually helps you cast further. So the length of the rod, the action of the rod, the power of the rod, all three put together, and the last component is the thickness of your line. So all these four plays a critical role on how far you cast. So if you're using, let's consider this example wherein you're using an 8 feet rod of same power, same action, same line length, and you're using a 10 feet rod with the same action, power and same line thickness, and you're casting the same lure weight. Your 10 feet rod will actually help you cast further because it's got that advantage of the length, and the 8-foot rod, the lure probably may not cast the same distance as a longer rod. So choosing the right rod, also you'll have to look at the rod action and the rod power. So when you actually look at the rod action, it's simple to put it this way. So I'm just going to use a catapult example here. So the actual rod action is how much the rod bends when you're casting the lure and for it to come back to the normal straight position. So there are 4 types of action. So extra fast, fast, moderate and slow. So this is how much the rod actually loads for you to be able to cast the lure further. So similar to a catapult, so the further the rod loads, you're going to be able to cast the lure further. So probably going either for a fast or a moderate would kind of cover all aspects. So that will be probably the ideal things to do, unless you want a extra fast rod or a slow. So the choice is yours. So like I said, the more it loads, so you'll be able to cast it further. But the disadvantage of slow is it's too flexible. So what happens when you're actually trying to set the hook and things like that, also it actually probably becomes a little hard to set the hook on the fish's mouth because the rod is going to bend too much. So the next component is a rod power. So rod power, you have 3 kinds of power. So you have a heavy, medium and light in generic, and these days you also get medium heavy or medium light and things like that. But the basic thing is that divided into 3 components: heavy, medium and light. So what this means is like actually how much load you need to put on the rod for the rod tip to bend. So heavy, you need to put more weight and more load for it to actually bend. Medium and light, and probably medium would probably cover both sides, unless you want to have a heavy rod, and especially when you're fishing using lures, poppers and stick baits, probably you want a little bit of a heavy action power rod, because you're going to be casting and you're going to be working the lure, so you need that heavy action rod. So we've covered the rod basics on how to choose the length and how to choose the right rod action and power. So now we'll go into the reel sizes and what are the aspects that you need to be looking at while picking up a reel. So when you're buying a reel, there are different components that you'll be looking at. Number one is the size of the reel. There are different sizes varying from 1,000 to 30,000 these days. So nothing but the size of the actual spool in itself. So 3,000 is a little bit smaller, 4,000, 5,000. So it tells you how much line you can actually put on as well. So 3,000 obviously is going to hold lesser line. So the bigger you go, you're going to be able to put more line. So the components that you'll have to look at while buying a reel, to try and buy something that's saltwater rated when it comes to rod as well, because if you buy a freshwater rod and reel, you can't use it in saltwater. But if you buy a saltwater rod and reel, you can use it in both salt and fresh. So it's going to actually work out much cheaper in the long run. So when you're actually looking at the reel, you'll have to be looking at the different components. So the different components being, so you'll have to look at the gear retrieval ratio. So in this example I'm showing here, it says that it's 5.7:1. What this actually means is, for every one rotation of your handle, how many times is your actual reel spool going to rotate. So in this example, it's going to rotate 5.7 times for every rotation of the handle. And the next component is the weight. A lot of people go for light weighted reels these days because they want to be casting all day. The heavier reel obviously will make you tired casting for a longer duration. Lighter the reel, it's better. Next component you need to be looking at is the drag, how much drag you want to use. So this also depends on what kind of fishing you want to be doing. If you want to go for big game, bigger GTs and tunas and all big barramundi and all that, you will probably need more drag. Or if you're just going to be doing freshwater and all that, and again, even freshwater you do get big cutlas and rohus and mahseers. So depending on the species, if you're just going to target small fishes, you don't have to go for much drag. So drag component is also normally specified on the reel. And the next one is the line retrieval per crank. What this means is how much inches of line is retrieved back into the reel for every spin of the reel. So in this case it says 120 centimeter or 47.4 inches in inch conversion. So which means every turn of your handle you're going to get 120 centimeter of line back into the reel. So this kind of relates to the gear ratio as well. So it spins for 5.7 times in this example, and it takes in 120 centimeters. And the number of ball bearings. So the ball bearings, the more ball bearings, the smoother your reel is. Obviously the cost of the reel also will go up normally when there is more ball bearings. And also when you're buying a reel, there are different types of gear ratio. Normally you get HG, XG and things like that. So what XG means is like it's got higher retrieval ratio, probably about 7:1. So every turn of a handle you get 7 times rotation of your actual spool in itself, which is normally used for popping and using stick bait, because when you're actually popping, you actually work the popper and you need to get the slack out before the next pop. So when you have higher retrieval ratio, it will actually help you out with popping and using stick baits. And when you're doing jigging, normally people go for the HG, high gear, which is a little lesser ratio compared to the XG. And when you're doing bait fishing, it really kind of doesn't matter, because the gears are not that relevant when it actually comes to the bait fishing. So what we'll do in the next session, we'll go through different types of lines and what PE means and how to choose the right line. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to our channel, like and share, and please put your comments in if you like this video to encourage us to put more of these videos online. Thank you.